Welcome back to Hannity. Senator Ted Cruz had some tense exchanges with Donald Trump at tonight's GOP debate. Earlier tonight, the Texas senator joined us from the spin room in Houston. Senator Ted Cruz, welcome, sir. Boy, what a barn burner, what a debate tonight, Senator. You three, Donald Trump, Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, the center of attraction. A lot of fighting going back and forth. How did you come out?
Well, Eric, I think it was a terrific night. I think there was a lot of clarity tonight. You know, we're just 5 days away from Super Tuesday, the single biggest allocation of delegates on a single night. And I think what became very clear is that Donald Trump is not the right candidate to go head-to-head with Hillary Clinton in November. That on policy issue after policy issue, his position is identical to Hillary, whether it is supporting Planned Parenthood, whether it is supporting Bernie Sanders-style socialized medicine, whether it is supporting the Wall Street TARP bailout, or whether it is on foreign policy supporting Hillary's Libya invasion or toppling of the government in Libya and supporting John Kerry and rather astonishingly saying that he would be neutral between Israel and the Palestinians. All of those are policies of liberal Democrats, and I don't think that's the right candidate to go head-to-head with the Democrats. And I think for the first time, really, in these debates, Trump's consistent New York liberal views were exposed to the watchers. Senator,
I want to go into some policy initiatives you guys talked about, but first let me take it on a visceral level. A lot of fighting going back and forth. Did you expect that? And do you think how did you do in those back and forths?
Well, look, there was a lot of fighting. You know, it's interesting. Donald, I think, recognizes that the only candidate who can beat him is me. I'm the only candidate that has beaten Donald and the only candidate that can beat Donald. You look at Super Tuesday, we are positioned to have a very strong Super Tuesday. We've got a significant lead in my home state of Texas. Marco Rubio is a good guy. Polls came out today that have him 15 points down in his home state of Florida. If you can't win your home state, that's a big problem. And I think that's the reason why Donald, day in, day out, has been attacking me. And, you know, Donald can't defend his own records. Whenever you point out what he's actually said, he just screams liar, he insults you, he attacks you, he makes it personal, and he gets very rattled. He doesn't like anyone pointing to his actual substantive records. But I think that's ultimately a sign of weakness, and I believe the voters can see through it. We need to win because the stakes are too high. We are fighting for our kids. And if we nominate a candidate who loses to Hillary Clinton, that is not what we need to do this
Senator,
year.
At one point you turned to Donald and it was heated. It was a heated exchange going back and forth. And you said, Donald, calm down. And he turned around and said, you're a basket case. I was like, what am I watching here? This is like WWE.
Well, look, Donald engages in a lot of projection because he gets rattled. You know, whenever you mention his poll numbers, Donald loses it. And in particular, I pointed out that in the last 10 national polls, Donald loses to Hillary in 8 of them. And in the last 10 national polls, I either tie or beat Hillary in 8 of them. He gets very, very upset. He also, you know, it was stunning tonight, Eric. He ran away from his health care plan. For 20 years, Donald has advocated socialized medicine, the government in charge of everyone's health care. He said it at the past debates. Tonight, he ran away from it, wasn't willing to defend it. It really was striking. And let me say, to the working men and women of this country, the small business owners, to all the folks who are struggling under the Obama economy, Donald Trump's socialized medicine would kill even more jobs than Obamacare. It would make it even worse. I guess that's why he ran away from it. But I do think the voters are recognizing this is a man who is not prepared to be president and whose views are much, much closer to Hillary Clinton's than they are to Republican primary voters.
You know, at one point on Obamacare, you got to that a little bit later. It came out of the box with immigration, went to the Supreme Court on Obamacare.
Yeah.
You had asked him at one point, have you said this in the past? And he said he hadn't. And the two of you had this moment where you're looking at each other, and I wasn't really sure who was right.
Well, it's easy to confirm. He has said over and over, perhaps dozens of times, that he supports socialized medicine, the government paying. When he's asked who pays, the government. And in fact, he's described in his own words, he said he's very liberal on health care. And so I have to admit, it was astonishing. Listen, Donald is an entertainer, and sometimes he seems to live in his own reality, that whatever he says at the moment is the only truth that exists, and whatever else he may have said for years in the past doesn't matter. I mean, listen, Eric, this is a man who sent me a cease and desist letter threatening to sue me for running a TV ad that simply consisted of playing a tape of Donald on national television, describing his views on abortion as very pro-choice, as supporting partial birth abortion, as pro-choice in every respect. It is a remarkable concept for Donald to say it is defamation to show the voters what he has said on national television about his own policy positions. We saw that tonight where he simply said a flat-out falsehood that he doesn't support government control, socialized medicine. That's been his position for decades, and he can't run away from the cold, hard facts on national television.
Senator, you could clear this up for us. I'm trying to figure, I'm watching this. You have a very similar immigration policy to Donald Trump, do you not?
Well, in some respects, and you know, it's interesting, when he launched his campaign for president, Donald discovered the issue of immigration, and he came out very loudly with a lot of hot rhetoric. But, you know, what's striking is just 3 years ago, we're not talking 10 or 20 or 30, 3 years ago was 2013. It was the battle over the Gang of Eight, the Rubio-Schumer amnesty bill. And I led the fight against amnesty, and we won. We beat the Rubio-Schumer amnesty bill. During that entire battle, Donald was nowhere to be found. As I observed in the debate, while I was leading the fight against amnesty, Donald was firing Dennis Rodman on Celebrity Apprentice. And indeed, he was tweeting out just 3 years ago his support for amnesty. And one of the things this debate made clear, Donald's own personal record on immigration is terrible. He had a $1 million court judgment against him for being part of a conspiracy to hire illegal immigrants to build Trump Tower. Just today in the news, it was reported that his hotel down in Florida brings in hundreds of foreign workers instead of hiring American workers. That's not 10 years, 20, 30 years ago. That's today. And so I understand he thinks immigration is a good political issue, but his entire life he's been on the other side making money from illegal immigration rather than standing with the working men and women of this country. I've been leading the fight against amnesty and successfully defeated it in the United States Congress.
So, Senator, I'm listening to this. We've done about 4 or 5 minutes or so of this interview, and I hear Donald. I hear Donald quite a bit. I haven't heard Marco once. I'm wondering, is the new strategy, let's go after the front runner? And by the way, sir, if it is, why so late? What have you been waiting for?
Well, let me be clear, Eric. I have been taking on Donald for many weeks and months. That was the case. How do you think we won Iowa? I'm the only candidate that has beaten Donald, and I did it by taking him on directly. Every other candidate was afraid to do so. You know, a few days ago, I visited with Jeb Bush and told him that I was sorry he was not going to join us on the debate stage because he'd been the one other candidate with the courage to take on Donald. I was glad to see tonight Marco enter the fray. It's a little bit late, but he did a good job. He rattled Donald. I thought that was a good thing. Listen, the reality is in Super Tuesday, there is only one campaign in a position to beat Donald Trump, and that is our campaign. So if you are one of the 65% of Republicans who think Donald is the wrong person to go up against Hillary Clinton, and if you're voting in any of the Super Tuesday states coming up in just 5 days, I ask for your support, because if we're splintered, then Donald ends up winning. If we stand together and unite, we will beat Donald on Super Tuesday. We'll beat him for the nomination, and then we will beat Hillary Clinton.
So can I ask you that? Let me ask you that. Super Tuesday, 600 delegates or so being awarded.
Yeah.
Do you feel like you're going to be awarded more delegates this coming Tuesday than Donald or Marco Rubio, for that matter?
Listen, I believe we're going to do very, very well. You know, I can tell you on Sunday on the Stephanopoulos show, when Marco was asked what state he could win, you know, George Stephanopoulos pointed out he couldn't win Iowa, he couldn't win New Hampshire, couldn't win South Carolina, couldn't win Nevada. He said, well, you got to win some state. Where could you win? And Marco pointed to Florida on March 15th in another 3 weeks. 26 states and territories will have voted by then. What Marco was saying is he didn't think he could win a single state on Super Tuesday.
Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Eric. God bless.